Well, hello! I'm wearing my special, extra special, $4 ugly shirt. I got two of them for $4. Couldn't resist it. It's like 95% off. It's really ugly. If I ever get a chance to take a vacation again, I'll wear it to South Florida, but it's inappropriate for wearing around here. How you doing? You know, I probably got 1,000 videos on the supercell. I got some pictures here on the back of my clipboard that I use for giving a lecture. Here's a nice little picture here. You can actually see those two holes on either side of either pole. Of course, a magnet doesn't have poles. It has two drainage points towards a plane of rest. Yeah, kind of like the drain in your shower. Magnetism is kind of analogous to the whirling vortex. Like if you got one of those fancy shower heads that sends out 100 little jets that are actually emanating. Of course, the water that comes out of the shower head is the same water that goes down the drain. But we don't take a shower over the drain water. Yeah? We take a shower over the shower head water, but it's both the same water. But we got different names for one and the same thing, like people talk about ice floating in the water. And of course, ice is the water. This is the metaphysics of rest, and of course, this is what humanity doesn't understand. It's kind of neat. We say rest in peace. We have that engraved on the tombstones. The Latin for rest is pax, or peace, which of course is also to rest. To say rest in peace is basically like saying rest and rest. It means one and the same thing. In the Greek, the word is erinia. It's much more beautiful in the Greek than saying peace. That's where we actually get the female name Irene from. It comes from the Greek word meaning peace. Isn't that interesting? Rest in peace, from the Latin word requiescat in pace, which means may thy, meaning the deceased, rest in peace. But that's, like I said, saying rest and rest. You ever notice if you've ever been around a disturbed person, and I don't mean disturbed like they just got out of a padded room disturbed, even though they should possibly be there, you can actually feel them. It's kind of like a vortex of hell. But a vortex, of course, is a half a hyperboloid. If you actually take a hyperboloid, or excuse me, a torus, take a half of a torus, and either side you're looking at a vortex. So a vortex is half a torus. Of course, it's a negative image of the torus because that drain would be the hole in the donut. No different than that toroidal geometry of magnetism. You see that hole in the center. So instead of saying a vortex of hell, I should have accurately, to define the geometry, referred to a fountain, because that's what magnetism is. Like, I was in Las Vegas once when I was a lot younger. I hated it there because I don't believe in gambling at all. And they take the same water that's in the placid little fake pool there, and it goes through pumps and it gets shot out, and nobody's interested in the placid waters, they're interested in the fountain. But of course the fountain water is the same thing as the placid water, except you know, ejected out at high velocity, and that's what everybody oohs and ogles over. This is also too the main reason why humanity can understand rest. You can understand the placid waters, but you truly understand the fountain. You're fascinated by it, and everybody loves looking at that. But of course, everybody's fascinated by a vortex, looking at rest. Magnetism is, of course, the fountain. The rest, of course, is resting towards a hyperboloid, which, of course, the negative image of a torus is this hyperboloid or hourglass shape. If you actually look at this and imagine this in negative, kind of like a camera negative, we're looking at a torus. The negative image of this hyperboloid or hourglass shape is the torus. So that would be the singular geometry. And this, of course, is a vortex. When people say vortex, they're just talking about this. But you can't have this without this also. In this case, of course, the sands are pointing from one side to the other. But in the case of energy or fields, everything is actually draining towards a antispatial vector right here, where there's nothing here. There is a little space here, and there are things flowing through the center there, but we can't take that analogy too far. I'd like to talk about the metaphysics of rest. Rest in peace. I always known, even in an early age, like, you know, this is really stupid. To say rest in peace is like saying rest and rest. Because true peace, or erinia in Greek, itself means peace. Rest implies peace, and peace implies rest. The magnetic infers the dielectric, and the dielectric infers the magnetic, except loss of energy or inertia. This is the reason why, of course, that people that are agitated are extremely ignorant, or they're usually young. And to say young and ignorant 99 times out of 100, of course, means the same thing. And this, of course, is where I upset the Gen Zers and a lot of the Gen Xers. You know, people that get older, they gravitate towards calmer music, like classical. I've actually enjoyed classical music my entire life. Young people, you know, they like the death metal and, you know, just any other sort of loud, obnoxious music that makes your, which is fine, you know, get that out of your system. You know how older people say, get that out of your system. Sow your wild oats and the rest of it. It's an era of agitation. I never went through that. I actually always was interested in rest, and even though I did a lot of skydiving and cave diving, but younger people like agitation. Of course, agitation is a vortex of hell. I was actually at peace thinking about this video and countless other things today when somebody who will be agitated for the rest of their life contacted me today. 2 people actually contacted me today, and they are a ball of agitation, like referring to a ball of magnetic torus. And they tried to agitate me. This whole world, of course, this entire purpose of this world of phenomena and things that are always in flux and reflux is agitation. This is the same reason why sannyasins, ancient term, to translate ancient Pali, have now been for 28 plus years. They're forest dwellers. It's like, well, why do they dwell in the forest? They would only come into town with their begging bowl to, you know, beg for some food, then they go back out into the forest. They didn't want to be around the rack and rabble of humanity, which are an endless case of drama and agitation. They would get their food, go back into the forest, eat it, and they would reflect on the nature of the universe. Even though I'm not a forest dweller, you know, and I've got like 10 computers, a cabin in the woods, which is very much more peaceful than it is here. I don't even have cell phone service there. It's so peaceful. There's also, too, very, very little EMF, and electromagnetic radiation down there. Of course, I'm still being bombarded from space by satellite signals and satellite TV signal, direct TV, dish network. You see, you're still being bombarded, unfortunately, but it is a lot less. And you can actually feel yourself having a calmer mind there, and it's not the fact that there aren't roaring cars going up and down the road. The one thing that I can't stand, and I'm getting to the point here very quickly in talking about agitation, is that I know the absolute best of the best of the best works that have ever been written that we have access to, like Plotinus, Numenius, Iamblichus, Proclus, Stylianus, Damascius, the fragments of the oracles of Delphi, the very, very, very best. I know what they are. A lot of people just don't. They'll recommend garbage, stuff that, you know, as you get older, time is short. You know, I will not waste my life reading trash. But as great as these masters are, I can't stand the verbosity, the logomachy. Even Plotinus, who's my favorite author in the world, and he says the most wise things. And one day I'll actually translate his works before I kick the bucket. Even him, you could stick the entire crux of the universe into a comic book. And then some of you are thinking, well, talk is cheap, why don't you do it? I've actually already done it, and it's a free download. By the way, I recently uploaded some great stuff onto my Substack. My Substack is in the description of this video. All the stuff there is for free access. I recently, just today, a few hours ago, uploaded an enormous pile of the very best translations from the ancient Pali. That's circa 2,500 years old. It's an ancient dead language. I'm a translator of same. Those are all free downloads. Any donation is always greatly welcome. But they can't actually get to the crux of things. And when I talk about the crux, I've been talking about this for decades, it's called the paraphrasable core of anything. In other words, stick it in a nutshell. I don't like to, and nor should you, unless you're young and you feel like you have all the time in the world, because that's what young people do. Oh my God, too much time in my hands. You get older, you'll think exactly the opposite. Is that it's just a waste. I want a paraphrasable core of what something is. The paraphrasable core of the universe, and also too liberation ontology, how to get there, which of course goes by literally a dozen different names, refer to one and the same thing. Sati, Mneme, Sati, anamnesis, Platonic recollection, Apophatism, theurgy, sati, samadhi. These all refer to the negative dialectic of subjective extraction. It would be analogous to if the broadcast were consciousness itself, which is nearly a perfect analogy. Extraction from, well, I identify as the radio looking in the mirror, thinking it is the radio, thinking it is the broadcast, all the machination of the signal processing of saying, to extract yourself out from the radio, the battery, the broadcast. The broadcast is not the signal. To identify with and as the pure signal, but the signal itself, and it's the same distinction because radio signal is no different than the light that's shining on my bald head right now. Never, if you want to, you will never, ever understand metaphysics, theurgy, I don't care if you call it mysticism, I don't give a damn what you call it. You will never understand it unless you're able to distinguish light from illumination, the signal from the frequency or the wavelength. Take your pick, frequency or wavelength. That is a disturbance. It's an agitation of an energy signal. Ice, water, and steam are all water. Ice floating in the water. It's like, no, the ice is the water. It's not floating. Ice isn't floating in the water. It's just a modality of water. We differentiate it because it's solid and it's cold, etc., etc. One and the same thing, but one is the principle under agitation. The principle under agitation in ancient Greek and in Pali is you take a prefixual, both the same, Greek and Pali. And Sanskrit, you take an a prefixual before it, or a in Pali or Sanskrit. You put it before the word light or gnosis, and you get avidya, agnosis. And you say, well, that translates in every dictionary as ignorance. It doesn't mean ignorance. It means illumination itself. Well, how's that different than light? The illumination falling on your bald head is light. You know, fundamentally, we can state that as a truism, which is undeniable, but the devil is in the details. The details and the extrinsic attribute of same does not mean avidya nor agnosis. Whether it be Pali or Sanskrit or Greek, same thing, same metaphysics, is the principle under agitation. The energy under agitation refers to a signal. There's not a radio on this earth that can tune in a signal that is not under disturbance. We call that, in this case, it is under a cyclical disturbance of 162.400 megahertz. Millions of hertz, or cycles per second. Well, what would the energy be without the disturbance? It would be rest energy. There's no such thing as a radio that can tune a signal that doesn't have an agitation attached to it. Removal of the agitation, or the frequency or the wavelength, no different than the entire foundation of all mysticism, metaphysics, and liberation ontology is removal of the agitation. The two most important passages, both in Pali and Sanskrit, and are separated by many hundreds of years, but it makes no difference. The truth is the truth is the truth. I always laugh when I used to debate the unintelligent. They say, well, I'm never interested in that 2,000-year-old stuff. The truth is the truth. It doesn't have an expiration date like a carton of milk. The two most important passages, and I've given these time and again, is Bhava Nirodha Nabandham and Yoga Chittavritti Nirodha. Bhava Nirodha Nabandham means the subjugation of becoming. And becoming is just an ancient Pali word to refer to frequency or modulation, i.e. agitation. The subjugation of, Nirodha, subjugation of, the disturbance, bhava, becoming, modulation, means the word nirvana. In other words, nirvana is a complete and total absence of agitation. Spiritual agitation. Well, it means ignorance. Well, when I say ignorance, or you hear ignorance, or you say ignorant, you're thinking about ignorance of a psychophysical being. Well, that guy's ignorant. Well, he's unintelligent, but the metaphysics of the term avidya or agnosis, Sanskrit, Pali, Greek makes no difference, does not actually mean ignorance. We are interested in rest here. People keep asking me over and over again, what is the methodology of theurgy? It's like, well, what does fulfillment mean to you? Fulfillment can't be had under any form of agitation. any premise of false identity with or as that thing, that meat suit in the mirror in your bathroom while you're brushing your teeth. Why do you identify as that? What's the complete subjugation of nirodha, of that identity? And that identity means avijjana. Well, it means ignorance. It means, if you want to say metaphysical ignorance or metaphysical agnosis, that would kind of be okay, but it doesn't actually mean ignorance. It means a modulation or disturbance of spirit which is inherent to the principle. In other words, the extrinsic or attributional side of the principle. Yoga Chittavritti Nirodha. That's from the Yoga Sutta Patanjali's. Yoga is no different than saying liberation. Yoga, i.e. samadhi, is Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Nirodha means subjugation of, cutting off of. Vritti means perturbation, disturbance. No different than saying frequency or modulation of the spirit, of the nous, of the will. In this case, the word is chitta. In Latin, that would be spiritus sanctum. You could say soul if you want. It doesn't mean mind. Unfortunately, in English, mind and consciousness are kind of one and the same thing, and that's extremely unfortunate. And this is where people get really confused who have English as their natural language. But liberation from what? Liberation is rest. You know, to make hell is to make disturbance. If you're ever around somebody, they're a fountain of disturbance. You know, it's fascinating, kind of like burning a fire. I mean, this is the modulation of disturbance. So what does it mean to actually have rest? Irinia in Greek, true peace, rest peace. Well, how do you achieve that? There's no polishing the turd. There's no such thing as purity of existential consciousness. Consciousness is the consubstantiality between two things, mind and spirit. Mind and spirit, in consubstantiality, you have life. What is a perfect analogy of that right here? Well, the signal which is everywhere and nowhere. If I smash this radio, the signal is still everywhere and nowhere, right? Right? Everybody knows that. Well, at least most everybody does. Well, the consubstantiality of that signal, along with this radio, and the interlocutor of which is this antenna, which in the case of life is water. Yeah? Signal everywhere, i.e. the spiritus sanctum, i.e. the soul, the psychophysical body, including consciousness. Of course, consciousness is analogous to the broadcast. The interlocutor of which, and this is in Nehemiah 53, talks about you can't join two things without a third. The third thing, of course, is water in this case, or in the case of the radio analogy, it would be the antenna. The thing that comes out of the speaker is not the signal. Now, every dumb person on this earth think that what comes out of the speaker is the same thing as the signal, but it ain't, is it? You have analog to digital converters, we have an interpretation of it, we have the gain of saying. In other words, how good is the signal being received? Depends on your antenna, how strong the signal is. There is no better analogy on this earth to explain it to people, better or more simply than that. So, in the case of the 1,000 or so videos I have regarding the supercell, or the supercell, the magnetism in the supercell, of course the magnetic field is of the toroidal geometry of disturbance. The hole at the center, of course, is rest. The actual wholeness is at the center of the whole, you know, between these two so-called polarities, which is just, i.e. the vortex on either side of a torus. Right here in the middle is the wholeness. In other words, at the base of every vortex, or hole, if you will, because a vortex is a hole, is itself rest or wholeness. That's where fulfillment is. The complete inverse of agitation. Agitation is no different than saying frequency or disturbance. Yeah? No different. And of course, the ancients, when they wrote these texts, they didn't know anything about radio frequencies or disturbances or modulation. But everything in nature is self-reflexive, and it is also, too, a perfect fractal paradigm. The actual principle and agitation attribute of signal is no different than the principle attribute agitation of the soul, and its corresponding consciousness as passed through the filter of the radio. In this case, of course, we're talking about the body. The world is designed to agitate us. People nag us to death. This is the reason, like I said, the Sannyasins were forest dwellers. This is the rest nexus that all mysticism, all true metaphysics commands the seeker to go after. The chasm of the chaos and agitation, i.e. the rest nexus between agitation. What is the rest nexus? We call that the plane of inertia between the magnetic and the dielectric. It sits at the inverse of both. That would be the perfect antispatial vector. Rest. Everything in nature tends towards rest. That's why there's no straight lines in the universe, because everything is curved linear. Here's the paraphrasable core of an enormous pile of books from the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima, and Gautara Nikaya, Kudaka Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya. Many, 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 and I've been through all of them countless dozens of times. In the ancient texts, dead language, by the way. Paraphrasable core of the entire thing. Because I love being pithy. If you can't stick it into a comic book, and I've done a lot better than that, it's right there in the description. By the way, I have a lot of audio uploaded to my Substack, which is in the link below. A lot of texts, all free downloads. Here's the paraphrasable core of all of that. So I don't want to read those thousands and thousands of pages. That's fine. I agree with you. I did it for you. I will extract out the salient kernel or nexus of it. Majjhima Nikaya at 141. That's Roman indexing, by the way. What do you suppose, followers, if people were carrying off into the Jeddah Grove, as a forest, bunches of sticks, grasses, branches, leaves, and did with them as they wished, burned them up, would it occur to you, followers, that these people are carrying us off, or doing with us as they please, are burning that which we are? No, indeed, dear Lord. And how so? Because, Lord, none of that is our soul. Our soul, of course, is a misnomer. The soul is what I should be said. Nor what our soul subsists upon. Just so, followers, what is not you, do away with it. When you have made done with that, it will lead to your bliss and welfare as long as times last. The true paraphrasable core, that was a bit of an abstraction leading to this one, is Majjhima Nikaya 1436. I have all these, by the way, in the Substack, free download. Whatever forms, feelings, perceptions, experiences, or consciousness, that would be Rupa Vedana Sana Sankara Vijnana, i.e. psychophysicality, i.e. the corporeal husk. Analogous to the radio and the antenna, and the battery, and the 80 processors, the speaker, all the garbage that makes up this radio. Whatever of this is, i.e. the five aggregates of the psychophysical, these he sees, the wisdom seeker, to be without permanence, anicca, as suffering, as ill, plague, boil, sting, pain, affliction, foreign, otherness, as empty, shunyata, as without soul, anattati. So he turns the mind or the will or spiritus sanctum, take your pick, in the ancient Pali the term is chitta, away from these, and therein he gathers the nous, or in this case the chitta, within the realm of immortality. In the ancient Pali the term is amatya datya. Amatya datya, the realm of immortality. Kind of rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? This is a dead language, by the way. It's been dead for over 2,000 years. Sometimes I have dreams in ancient Pali. Isn't that neat? I am an old soul indeed. This is tranquility. This is that which is most excellent. Majjhima 1.330. Gautama is a son of the Scythians, a renunciate. Sir, before you is him, meaning Gautama, who is among the progeny that delights and rejoices in destroying, becoming, and the end of the root of becoming. And this, of course, gets back to Bhav Nirodhana Bandham. Nirvana means the subjugation or the cutting off, the ending of becoming. Becoming is no different than saying agitation, no different than saying modulation, no different than saying frequency, wavelength, disturbance, which is ultimately no different than saying hell. Everybody thinks of hell in the terms of like hellfires, and of course you're perpetually for all time and eternity heaping wood upon something that can never be satiated, because the fire must be perpetually fed. And that is what hell is by definition, is perpetual agitation. Unfortunately, in debating these people, I've had to make a list of 17 proprietaries. They think that there is no soul, and it's like that's not the case. In the Nikayas, these people are completely non-doctrinal, very metaphysically illiterate. Like the chitta, and the chitta in the ancient Pali is no different than saying the spirit, the sanctum, or the soul, is the only thing that attains to the state of non-clinging. Chitta is the only thing that is to be taintless, the only thing that is gathered in the realm of immortality, the only thing that is basis of paranibbana, which means full nirvana. Nirvana just means nirvriti. Nirvana itself, nirvriti, means the end of disturbance. Vritti is disturbance or agitation. Nir means the end or cutting off of. So the word nirvana is prefixual. Nir and vritti, the cutting off of modulation, the ending of disturbance, the ending of agitation, the ending of frequency, the ending of modulation. All of this, Greek, Indian, Egyptian, Advaita Vedanta, the Upanishads, the original Vedas, all of the Nikayas, and I've been through all of the Nikayas dozens of times. And the Nikayas is a stack of books. It's about 4 feet tall. Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, Kudaku Nikaya. Kudaku Nikaya is huge, 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 huge. I've been through all of that a zillion times. You know, if I focused down on the stock market, I'd be rich and retired on some island right now. But being the wise one, I knew what was important, wisdom over having a bunch of stuff. However, I admit to wanting a vacation. That's still a disturbance in my mind. It's like, I need a vacation. The only thing that's the basis of samadhi, the only thing, I have all this, by the way, in my Substack below. The only thing that is indestructible compared to a diamond, you know, the basis of the Arya path, the only thing that's said to be immortal, eternal, nityam, the only thing that's called eternal, impermanent, of course, is anicca. Cut off the A, you got nitya, which means eternal. See, these people don't even read. It's kind of like the people that I had to deal with and debate with. It's kind of like a Christian that's never read the Bible, will never read the Bible, and doesn't believe in Jesus. How could you be a Christian and not believe in Jesus? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's kind of a near-perfect analogy. So, anyway, there's a 17-point list that the only proper noun which is said to obtain the state of emancipation, vimutta, is chitta vimutta. The only noun that is said to be liberated, that would be, of course, the soul. Care if you say spiritus sanctum or soul, nous in the Greek. Who cares? Different language, same thing. Yeah? So we have to ask ourselves about the rest of rest. That would be the total substrate of like rest energy. People don't see it. It's like, I don't see it. It's because it's not under a state of energy loss. The only thing you see are the release of energy. This is a release of energy. This, of course, is virtual. This is a release of energy. Got a light bulb down here, heating up the wax, releasing energy, causing the wax to bubble. This is the only thing people are interested in. That's all they see. They can't see rest. Humanity don't understand rest. And it's the same reason why they don't understand this neat little word called the ether. Because ether is total absolute rest. Rest energy. The true definition of inertia. You know. Everything in nature shows this to be the case. The magnetic and the dielectric, which the ancients did not know about, but they knew it in different terms. Same distinction between light and illumination. You know, the signal as energy, or the signal, or the rest energy. Of course, we say signal, we mean modulation. A radio can't tune a signal that's not modulated. Think about that, why don't you? What sort of signal can you tune that's unmodulated? Well, it's not even a signal by definition. It's just energy. Kind of like a battery. I don't have a battery here. Yeah, I do. I got a battery right here. You know, nobody's interested in this. People are only interested in what this can power and fascinate them with. Oh, plug some batteries into this and look at cool stuff happen. And what about this? Well, who cares about a battery? Reason nobody cares about rest or understands, it's the same reason nobody cares about a battery. Rest energy. It's kind of a crude analogy, but it's analogously perfect. Anyway, I hope you like this video. I kept it short and sweet and simple. Check out my Substack below for an enormous amount of audio and free articles that I've written. If you like these videos and whatnot, any donation is always warmly welcome, because God knows I'm trying to save for a vacation. But, you know. Nevertheless, it's still free. Lux e veritas. Thank you.